Hello everybody. Welcome back to the podcast Maré Sonora, or in English, Resonant Tide. My name is Marina and you are listening to the last episode with the sailor Laura Dekker, who was the youngest sailor to circumnavigate the globe. Today, she continues sharing some memories from that incredible trip when she sailed alone at the age of 14 and finished by 16 years old. I hope you enjoyed this last episode, and please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast Maré Sonora on your favorite podcast app, such as Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. Choose your best platform and enjoy it. We were in Whangarei for 2 seasons at the Marina, and I remember seeing you one day, and I thought I'm gonna try to approach her one day, but then you were super busy on board, and I was like, no, I guess that's the last thing she wanted is an annoying reporter asking her.
Oh, well, you knew me quite well then.
It's funny because before we went traveling, before we crossed the Pacific, the first images I saw of the Panama Canal were from your documentary. Mm-hmm. When you crossed with Guppy. It was so cool. When I was actually there and remembering your images were awesome. You were a super big inspiration for me, and I'm sure for many people, and you still will be for the younger who will be in touch with. I think it's awesome what you're doing and what you did, Laura. You were super. Congratulations for your achievements and for your strength to keep on and to have a beautiful initiative towards kids.
Thank you. Thanks.
I wanted to ask you about generosity, because one thing that I noticed when we were visiting the islands was how people were always extremely welcoming and beautifully and willing to share their lives with us and in a real meaningful way. How was it for you when you were traveling across the islands? I mean, talking about the South Pacific specifically.
Yeah, exactly the same. It's something that in all my presentations, I always really point out, like, specific things. The first time I heard it in the Caribbean, but I've heard it many times in the Pacific as well. The further you get away from civilization, and then you find people who live in these tiny huts and they just have nothing, and yet they are so happy and they are so friendly and they always invite you over to eat something and to talk to them. And I remember a few times I asked this, like, more often, are you happy? Don't you want to have more? Wouldn't you want to have a bigger house or like a car? And mostly the people just said, no, we don't. No, we've got everything. We've got food, we've got water, we've got our family, we're healthy. Like, what else do we need? One time, even I remember a woman, she got so angry. She was like, why do these Western people always think that we would need more stuff? We're totally fine. And she was like really pissed off. And I thought that was so beautiful, because they really are super happy, like more happy than most of the people I see walking in big cities that have a big house and 2 cars and a good job. They're just grumpy and stressed, and these people were just happy and sharing. And I also really love the mentality of giving and paying gifts forward. When someone helps you, they don't want anything in return. All they want is that you help someone else, that you give that spirit further. And I really like that, because that way when someone needs help, like, someone will just come and help them and not want anything in return. You can just feel, it's really genuine. They're very genuine people, and I love that. It's I do think it's a shame to see how it's changing. I really love that mentality, and I hate to see how it changes with tourism getting bigger and money and all those things. Because, like, I've been to the same islands quite a couple of times over the years, and every year when I come back, it's a little bit less. Like, it's and that's a shame. if you want to find that same genuine spirit, you really have to go far away from airports and places where I think mostly tourists come that don't appreciate that culture as much. Yeah, for me, that's just painful. I think if you visit a country, you need to really appreciate the people and dive into that culture and try to speak their language and not change them. Like, that's just not right. But that is what is happening, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. But I'm very grateful that I was still able to see it.
And Laura, speaking about one of the tricky moments of your trip, like when you were about to reach South Africa and you had to face a real bad storm, how was it?
I didn't even really like think about it. It was, so I sailed from Port Elizabeth to Cape Town, and there was a whole bunch of boats because you always take the right weather window to go to the next place. And so we'd waited out a good weather window, and all these boats left, I think like 6 or 7 of them. But then that evening when we checked into the weather forecast, it already said like, oh, there's going to be 40 knots of wind like the following day. And so a lot of the boats turned back to Port Elizabeth after that weather forecast. But I said, oh, I've been in 40 knots a lot and that's totally fine and I can do this. And one other boat did the same. They also said, yeah, whatever, you know, we can handle this. And then, but once you are past a certain point in South Africa, there's just like, there's no turning back because the current is too strong and there is no shelter. The coast is just really rough and rocky, and there's just no way you can anchor or shelter anywhere. And so when the wind hit, it was really, the waves, they build up so quickly, they become so steep. And my wind pilot and autopilot couldn't handle it, so I had to hand steer. But also it wasn't really 40 knots of wind. Eventually there was like 65 knots of wind, which is quite a lot more.
Wow.
And so really, I was sailing on just like literally a tea towel of a sail, and still my the side of the boat, like it was all underwater. We were heeling over so much. But the toughest part was that I had to hand steer, that I actually had to just be there all the time. But it's funny how when you get into a situation like that, it's just, yeah, you just have to. There's no choice. You just keep going and you keep going. And I remember the first hours were really hard because I was cold and it was just crappy and I was hungry and I just tired. But at some stage I told myself, okay, I'm just going to do one more wave, and then one more wave, and then one more wave. And I just kept going like step by step, but then wave by wave. I didn't really look further, and yeah, like that. I kept going pretty much the whole night and most of the following day. So yeah, that was really hard. I slept a long time after that. But it's interesting because when I think back about it, it's not even that I feel like that was the hardest thing I ever did, because my body literally just went into survival mode and said like, okay, I'm just steering this boat on the next wave. Next time. It's like, yeah, no, literally no choice. Just keep going. It's amazing what a human body is capable of doing if it has to.
And what was the distance from, did you say Port Elizabeth, right?
Yeah. I think it's like 3 days sail, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like a 3 or 4 days sail it was. So the first day it was all good, and then the second day, like the weather forecast came when the other boats turned back, and then the third and the fourth day was tough. Yeah.
The longest crossing was the Indian, right? Nearly 2 months for you. Yeah. You've said before that you like long passages. How did you cope with that long period without stopping?
Actually really well. Even though the Indian Ocean was like the worst ocean I have ever sailed on, it's mentally somehow it was just the best trip. I really, I found my rhythm and my peace like completely on that ocean. I was just happy. I think up until that moment, I had always fought the winds. Like on a sailboat, somehow the wind is never the way you want it. At least that's how it is for me. I think for most people probably. I hope. And I would be really annoyed. Like you would have one day of good sailing and then it would be shitty again. And I was really, in the beginning, I was so annoyed about that. It's like, you're either rolling and flapping around, or there is too much wind, or there's like... But on the Indian Ocean, the weather was just bad all the time. I either had no wind, or a lot of wind, like a storm. And I couldn't really be angry all the time. So, so just kind of said, okay, you know, that's it. I think for the first time, I really realized that nature is so much stronger, and how small I am on the ocean, and how grateful I should be that I am actually even there, that I can use the wind to even get anywhere. So, yeah, somehow I was just completely at peace. Even if we were going 3 knots the wrong way, I was like, well, you know, that's it. There will be another day when it's going to be better. So yeah, it was a really long trip, but yeah, I just loved it. It was great. It was very peaceful for me. Somehow. I can't really describe why, because the ocean was just horrible, but yeah.
You can see the good sides of it.
Learn to see the good side.
What is your final message for the kids who are curious and willing to join your foundation?
So if they're curious and wanting to join, they should just write me an email, and then we can get in touch and talk about how. But I think, you know, it doesn't have to be or have to do with sailing. For me, the most important thing is that they follow their dreams. Like, whatever it is, it's going to be hard, because if you do something that someone hasn't done before, or even something that someone has done, but it's like a big thing and everyone tells you that it's too big, it's not. Take small steps, and it's going to be hard. Absolutely. People are going to say it's crazy. People are going to tell you shouldn't do it. You're going to make mistakes, but it's okay, because that is part of the process. That is part of the journey. And enjoy that journey, but don't give up. Just please don't give up. Whatever you do, keep going, find another way. Even if you have to walk all the way around the mountain to get to the other side, I really honestly feel it's worth it. Because so far, all my goals that I have wanted to achieve didn't really go easy. But I'm really, really happy that I did do it.
That's awesome, Laura. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you, to listen to you, and to be able to share that with the listeners as well. I wish you all the best. Have an awesome time, and we keep in touch for maybe in the future, talk about it, how it was, and it would be lovely to hear you again. Thank you so much.
No problem. All right. Same. Thanks for the nice questions. Bye.
So you just heard the last episode with Laura Dekker. This was the first English series in the podcast, and I really hope you enjoyed. If you know anybody who might enjoy listening to this show, please share with your friends, family, or whoever might like it. We'll be super happy, and that will help us out so much. Thanks heaps for listening, and I see you guys next Monday with a new episode and a new series. Cheers!